That's brilliant writing. Brilliant, brilliant writing. Better than food, man. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Damn, that's good. I've recently been approached by some companies for some sponsorship, so I'm going to do some advertisements in the videos to come. I won't advertise anything on the show that I don't find useful or that I wouldn't purchase myself. So I'm just going to try this out, see how it goes. It's a good thing, you know. The reviews will be on Patreon for those who donate $1 or more ad-free. If you would like these reviews ad-free in the future, you can click on the link in the description below and donate $1 or more, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you. Also, I have a P.O box now, which I've listed the address in the description box below. Today is Act of Passion by the Belgian author Georges Simenon. This is another fabulous edition from NYRB Books. Love their stuff. I'm partially sponsored by them. They send me free books from time to time. I picked this one up myself, though. It says a great introduction by Roger Ebert. And yes, that Roger Ebert. It's cool that he was a reader as well. Unsurprising. I think he had great taste. We definitely see eye to eye on Fellini. That's for sure. He was a big Fellini fan, and so am I. I think La Dolce Vita is one of the greatest films ever made. This was a recommendation from one of the most generous patrons I've ever had. She is a revelation, inspiration, and testament to the kindness of strangers. Truly. Really, she is a fantastic person, and this show really would not be possible at the level that it is without her. So I'm deeply grateful to her. So thank you, Aisha. This was spectacular. This is also my first from Georges Simenon, a Belgian author who published something close to 500 books. Outrageous. He was very, very, very successful. He wrote detective novels, and he is responsible for creating this fictional detective named Jules Maigre. This is the first of his I've read, and I haven't read one focusing on Maigre, though he's briefly mentioned in this one. This was published in 1947. He wrote it in Florida, not far from where I was living a few years ago, actually, which is interesting to think about, except it was, he was writing it in the 40s. Simenon was often compared to Camus, and this book does have qualities similar to The Stranger, but I think I like it just as much, maybe more. It's very different, though you have the same basic setup, which is a murderer explains to you why he killed someone. In The Stranger, the victim was a man on the beach. In this, it was a woman that this man fell in love with, outside his marriage. It's a romantic, psychological, film noir thriller, and a disturbing portrait of a manipulative psychopath. It's more compelling when you discover that Simenon, at one point in his life, I think when he was younger, kind of hobnobbed with criminals and characters of the underworld, including 2 future murderers, apparently. Not forever, I think it was just a phase. But he did, for a period of time, know some shady characters, which must have been amazing fodder for his books. And to be sure, this is nothing if not authentic feeling. We come to discover quickly that the narrator is a murderer. Charles. He's a doctor. We come to discover he's murdered his lover Martine. We don't know why or how until the very end, and I mean like literally the last couple pages. The story is told in the form of a letter to a judge, referring to us, the reader, as Your Honor, and so forth, referencing things that happened during the trial and so on. It's a confessional story meant as an explanation for the reasons for his crime. But also, it's a love story, and a very moving one, if we are to trust the narrator, Charles, which we discover too late that we certainly should not. But when you don't know what's happened, the way the book operates, it's as if you're inclined to, which is why the book is so manipulative and why it works so well. It's the structure of it. Pulls you in to his side first. You're forced to hear his side of things. So you don't know what's happened. You don't know what he's done. He's a real bastard. But don't let me, judge for yourself. I don't want to ruin it for you too much, but that's really mischievous. He's spinning it as the story of a bourgeois man who has a drab marriage and discovers his one chance at happiness, his one chance at true love. It's playing off this idea. Life is extremely short. You don't get another shot at this, to the best of our knowledge. Despite what people say to feel optimistic, the cold hard truth is that you can in fact get too old and fuck it up, and you won't have any more shots. That we do have a finite amount of shots at happiness. We have a finite amount of decisions that we make in our lives. Everything is finite, right? People have this myth of constant reinvention. You can constantly, you're never too old to do anything. That's bullshit. You're absolutely too old to do some things. I'm far too old to do a lot of things, and I'm 31. Let's be real. You have a few shots at happiness, right? Maybe for some people only one. Maybe for some people none. Depends on how long you live, right? And when you realize that, it can become very frightening, as it should be. Plenty of people never find love, right? They're dead before they can, they're too afraid, whatever. Should love suddenly walk in your door, like he says on page 166, if I were asked today how one can recognize love, if I had to make a diagnostic of love, I should say, first of all, the need of nearness. I say advisedly a need as necessary, as absolute, as vital as a physical need. After that, the thirst to explain. A thirst to explain oneself, to explain the other. For you see, one is so filled with wonder, or so conscious of a miracle, one is so afraid of losing this thing, which one had never hoped for, which fate did not owe you, and perhaps gave to you in a moment of distraction, that at every hour of the day one feels the need of being reassured and, in order to be reassured, of understanding. Which fate did not owe you, and perhaps gave to you in a moment of distraction. That's brilliant writing. Brilliant, brilliant writing. One of the most pleasurable things about reading Simenon is that it's a very, very smart book. Very well crafted, but it's so accessible that it makes you, the reader, actually feel smarter than perhaps, well, in my case, than I may be. I was certainly feeling smarter than I actually am. It makes you feel smart as well, just for being able to understand the concepts that he's putting forth. And this is a man who was fairly humble about his own intelligence. He claimed he wasn't intelligent. He just followed his intuition when he was writing. The truth, of course, is that this is an extremely intelligent book. An outrageously good blend and totally addictive of an existential crime story mixed with, a film noir murder mystery in the form of a criminal's confession. Spectacular. So Charles, our unbelievably unreliable narrator, is a doctor, a mama's boy, and a browbeat husband. He marries his wife Armande in something closer to a business relationship than an act of passion. He lives in the Vendée, and he's in his 30s with a couple of daughters before he finally falls in love with a woman named Martine, a woman he meets in a train station in Nantes. They miss their train. It's extremely romantic. And I mean, good tragic European romance. I mean, come on, that's the best. But it's great. She kind of annoys him at first. She's young, 25 or something. She's frequently checking her makeup and smoking, kind of putting on this, this pose. She's very thin, she's very pretty. And this is the best description of the initial erotic stage of love that I've ever come across in literature, I think. Because the first time he sees her, he's not attracted to her. And he's actually kind of repulsed. He's actually kind of put off by her mannerisms, by her front, Now I feel that is so much more of an interesting idea and a realistic one that I don't know how many men could really achieve that because I just don't know how many men actually know women that well. So Simenon seemed to know women very well and knew a lot of women, if you know what I mean, a lot. He was sort of notorious for it, including Josephine Baker. Now that is so much more of an interesting idea that you as a man or woman could meet that man or woman you're going to fall insanely, literally, in love with. But the first time you meet them, you're sort of like, meh, okay, this person is sort of boring. Or you don't like something about them. They're doing this weird thing with their face, and they're sort of weird or kind of narcissistic and annoying, and their breath smells like coffee, and their mustache is uneven. And then getting from there to, oh my God, I can't have them standing in a room with anybody but myself, is extremely compelling. Never have I read that progression better than in Georges Simenon's Act of Passion. In a clip I linked to below, a British author named A.N. Wilson says, I believe that Simenon wrote about disastrous human relationships and the failure of men and women in their relationships and how love can turn to hate. That's what this book is about. This is a book about how love can turn to hate. And you're witness to every single step. It's deeply disturbing. Simenon's ability to analyze human relationships is amazing. On one hand, it's a classic, moving film noir love story. On the other, it's nuanced, smart, intimate, clever, subtle, and it all tricks you when you realize you're dealing with a pathological murderer. It's impossible to criticize the victim, his lover, Martine, in this book, because you fall for the murderer, just like her. It's magnificent in its deception. You're frequently on his side. In the beginning, you want him to win. You want him to find new love, to feel free. You want him to, you can relate You're like, oh, this is a man who's trapped and he's stifled and he's a mama's boy and he's a browbeat husband and he just needs to get out and he needs to find his true love and actually do something that he wants for once. Actually, we're frequently on his side. That's what's so fucking scary. Not forever, of course, but enough so that it's disconcerting. In the original French, the title was Lettre à mon juge, which makes more sense, of course, because it is a letter to a judge, but the English title is fine. It's a nice double entendre, of course, as you know. It could stand for sex and murder. The first part reminded me a lot of the 1945 film Brief Encounter. One of the greatest films I've ever seen, and hands down one of the most tragic cinematic love stories ever. In it, a man and woman contemplate having an affair with each other after meeting in a train station. There's a quote from the film, "This misery can't last." And later on, "Not even life lasts very long." And there you have it. That's kind of the driving force for Charles in the beginning. So we think. But, wherever you think, wherever I thought the story was going, is very, very different from how it ends up. Like I said, that's a very manipulative thing about the book. You make all sorts of suppositions in the first part, and then later you're like, oh man. So if we are to trust him, which we should not, he suddenly witnesses his one chance at happiness by possessing Martine, who becomes his object of obsession. And I mean real obsession. His jealousy is so poisonous and just grows to monolithic proportions. He actually brings her into his home life, into his world, introducing her to his wife and mother, and employing her as his secretary or his assistant or something, because he can't stand the thought of her seeing anybody else. So he's playing this very dangerous game, constantly trying to see her privately whenever possible, going insane not being with her at night. You can see the pressure cooker this man inhabits, or so that's the portrait he paints. The truth is obviously otherwise, because he eventually becomes physically violent. This is one of the most suspenseful murder stories I've read. Again, the entire book leads up to the murder like on the last couple pages. When he starts acting cruel towards her, in his jealousy and wish to possess her, it's hard to read. You can see in his words exactly where he's gone wrong, exactly where, even though he claims he wants to be loving, or so he says, he's scared of losing her, he's terrified. It's like witnessing the cliche lover in a French film noir, "Tell me where you've been!" But this time you don't just rely on two dimensions to imply the complex layers beneath. This time you have an x-ray into the mechanics of the mind of the criminal, right? Of the eventual murderer. You read the fear and terror the other person has at losing the only thing they ever wanted. You can see their horror at losing their one chance at happiness. But of course, this happiness is a fiction. What he's descending into is obsession, and not love. He's confusing it for love. It's a hideous form of jealousy that corrodes his entire being. Nothing will satisfy it. Nothing, that is, until he thinks he can finally kill the version of her, the other, as he puts it, that he can't control. So scary. Oh my god. More so because it starts off in such a romantic way. In a way where you're really on his side and like, yeah, this guy's life really sucks. And it seems like he's finally found somebody he loves. No. But in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, right. This guy's done something bad. And then you're like, oh hell. You just see the whole downward spiral. He's a psychopath. And he actually is. Because he kills her. That's not a spoiler. But his maid finds him calm. In fact, he says, get the police. Like his pulse doesn't raise after it's done. Whoa. I've heard in that video clip that the detective he created, Simenon, the detective Maigre, my uvula isn't working, he always tries to see in the heart of the criminal, to develop that kind of empathy, to understand him. That's precisely what Simenon is doing here. This book is a gaze into the deeply jealous, desperate heart of a murderer. He is not forgiving the narrator, but he's allowing us to understand him. It's very different than if we were to hear the story of a man who left his wife for another woman, then killed her after developing an insane jealousy and frequently beating her. That's true, but that's not the whole story, of course. You'd think from hearing that, my God, there's no humanity to be found in a person like that. None whatsoever. And yet, here's the story in his own words that we can understand. And you're able to not sympathize or forgive, definitely not. And maybe not understand on a total level, but at least you can see how it went from point A to point B, like the detective. So you're sort of placed in the detective role almost. Better Than Food, absolutely. Terrific book. Edge of your seat and very believable love story followed by a deeply disturbing metamorphosis into murder. Great stuff. So who should read it? If you're a fan of Ernesto Sabato's The Tunnel or Albert Camus' The Stranger, definitely. This is right up your alley. Please check it out. Or as far as films, as this is particularly cinematic, if you're a fan of Hitchcock or the film Match Point, definitely. I would highly recommend this. So what did I dislike about this book? Nothing. Not a damn thing. Nothing. It's perfect. Okay, coffee time. Oh, where's my... There it is. Got it. For those of you who are new, I take all the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video, and I place their names into this mason jar, and I pull out a name for every review I do, and I send whoever's name I pull out a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, usually roasted by yours truly, but lately, because of the pandemic, roasted by one of the wonderful roasters here in Portland, Oregon. And the coffee is delicious. If you'd like to get in on that, you can click on the link below and donate $5 or more per video on Patreon. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Unfortunately, international shipping is not included. $1 or more will get you access to the Patreon-only reviews, the Discord channel, and the Better Than Friday newsletter that I send out every Friday, which is just 5 different things I'm interested in at any given time. It could be books in the pipeline, music, movies, articles, changes week to week. And, like I mentioned, moving forward, if you donate $1 or more, you will get these reviews ad-free. And you will also get Patreon-only early access to these reviews. I don't do that for every review, but sometimes I do that for patrons. I release them a day early. If you'd be so kind to check it out, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. And, okay. Oh, that was a lot of shaking. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you very much, and best of luck to all the patrons. Okay, here we go. Way down in there. Oh. Nate. Thank you very much, Nate. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive Act of Passion by Georges Simenon. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and share this with somebody you think would enjoy this book. And also, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'd really appreciate it. And please always remember, bring a book wherever you go. Never know when you'll have 5 or 10 minutes. Pretty soon you'll be reading more books, sharing them with people. Your life will be better. You shall lead more lives than one. That is a wonderful thing about literature. That's what you can do. You can live multiple lives, because one life is not enough. So, great to see you as always. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night. I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.